Hello, everybody. Welcome to TheOneRing.net Torn Tuesday. I'm your host, Justin, because Cliff is not here. See, this is actually a reverse of an unexpected party and an unexpected dinner and unexpected guests because I was expecting Cliff to be here on time for his own show that he's hosted for 2 years, but he's never been on time. Does a wizard always arrive when he means to, or is he an ent and just takes his time? I bet you he's going to come in here all flustered and... So, let me, since I'm here by myself, you're going to ask what's going on here? It is episode 5 of the History of Dwarves, and we're talking about Bofur and Bombur and Biffer. And Cliff is late because he's hooking up with his date for tonight, so he'd rather handle his social life than be here and talk to you.
I was actually talking to my mom about coming in to see the show. Thank you very much. My mom was just asking me on the phone, can I watch this on my iPhone?
Absolutely. You can watch it at TheOneRing.net/live. And you
will
can also watch it at YouTube.com/TheOneRing. And if you just search for the History of Dwarves, you'll find us. So, yes. Welcome to part 5. Before we jump into the history of Bifur, Bombur, and Bofur, watch this. This is who we're talking about right here.
Hello, everybody.
Bombur, the big dude, Bifur, the big hat, or Bofur, the big hat, and Bifur, the quiet guy that doesn't talk with an axe in his head, and we're about to talk about that.
The Mongolian hat.
Before we get into that, it's been
very
a
nice,
crazy week.
Yes, it has been quite a crazy week.
Crazy week.
Crazy. It's been crazy wabbit, filled with crazy wabbits and all kinds of crazy things.
Crazy.
It's been a very, very interesting week. By the way, are you sure that iPhone users can actually load the page, TheOneRing.net/live, and that actual web-based a preview screen will it load on the iPhone?
We've always been enabled, yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's wonderful. Very good. Very good. So
we're following along the chat. Everybody is, everybody asks, hey, can you actually see what we're typing? We're watching what you're saying on YouTube and on our live page at TheOneRing.net/live. And we're going to get into this whole spread, but, we figure,
I'm looking at this
and unexpected dinner party, and usually this was the reverse. I was just saying this is the reverse of an unexpected dinner party because it was an expected dinner party with an unexpected tardiness.
Well, with an unexpected addition of chicken and ham and potatoes. They're all right here.
This is if you want to do a Lord of the Rings Hobbit feast, this is all you need.
Yeah, I agree. I wish I had my beer stein and my wooden plates and spoons and other implements that seem rather Middle-earthy. I didn't know we were going to have all this extra food here today. I would have brought my beer stein just because it says Ringers, Lord of the Fans on the side of my beer stein. It's kind of fun. I would have brought that.
You said you were going to.
I thought we were doing all this food next week. Anyways, here we go. We have a lot of interesting Dwarven history to talk about.
Usually every episode we talk about 2 dwarves, but this we have 3
and
crazy dwarves.
3 crazy dwarves. One of them can't even speak in the common tongue, and the other one, according to the filmmakers, does not speak at all. I'm still wondering if Stephen Hunter, the actor who plays Bombur, is going to have any dialogue in the movie Part 2 or the movie Part 3. We have yet to see if this actually happens.
But before that, this weekend was a big weekend for birthdays.
Oh, yes. Sir Ian McKellen had a wonderful birthday
and
this
Sir
weekend.
Christopher Lee was the day after.
Together.
What are the chances that both wizards were born on the same weekend, within hours of each other, probably on different
I'm sure
years?
They're a few years apart. they're about 15 or 17 years apart, I think, in actual age. But this is very interesting that Sir Ian McKellen was born when Christopher Lee was a teenager. How about that? That's pretty interesting.
Say that again? Ian McKellen
was born when Christopher Lee was a teenager.
Christopher Lee's the only one of the Lord of the Rings cast that actually met J.R. Tolkien.
Alive, in person, yes. And, well, gosh. Mr. Christopher Lee decided to release a heavy metal album right around his birthday, which is surprisingly cool. It's really cool. There's some very interesting stuff going on there. As it turns out,
Is everybody else having sound issues?
I think I can hear myself just fine. What about you guys?
Wizards party. There's a couple people saying the sound's bad, and then a couple people, and then everybody else isn't complaining. If Bombur doesn't get his "I'm hungry" bit after waking up in Mirkwood, that would be sad.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's something I totally agree with.
Bombur has some big scenes ahead.
He does. He's an important character in the history of the book from 75 years ago because he is one of the more memorable dwarves out of a somewhat generic grouping of 13 dwarves where Professor Tolkien did not go to any extra lengths to differentiate a lot of these dwarves one from another. Bombur is many people's perennial favorite. He's one of my favorite characters. Many fans really adore this character, Bombur, because of the mischief that he gets into and the fact that he's so immensely fat. He's so overweight. Bombur ends up, well, caught in an enchanted stream in Mirkwood that puts him sound asleep, and everybody else is forced to carry him. Another bit of comedy from Professor...
They have to carry him?
Because Professor Tolkien thought it was very, very funny that the heaviest heavy dwarf would fall asleep the hardest by falling into that enchanted stream. And so, thank you, lovely. So the fact that we have Bifur, Bofur, and Bombur in this set of dwarves, we're now moving away from direct descendants of Durin, as you find with Keely and Feely, who are direct nephews of Thorin, or some of the other dwarves who are direct descendants of Durin's line, but Bifur, Bofur, and Bombur are not. They are not descended from the royal family.
They're just normal dwarves.
They're just normal dwarves who have actually had quite a tough life. Professor Tolkien depicts the dwarves in a certain way, and Peter Jackson, with the assistance of Weta and the design team at Weta, have presented these three dwarves in a very, very stylized way. It's very, very interesting.
Bombur was Bofur's wife's favorite when I read the first book. Bofur's wife originally liked Bombur, and then they had a falling out, and then Bombur's brother Bofur said, "Hey, are you done with that?" And now they're husband and wife, I guess.
Oh, what are you talking about? What?
I don't know. The Bofur's wife is saying that Bombur was originally her beau.
So we're talking about one of the fans with the nickname Bofur's wife.
Yeah, we're in the chat room at TheOneRing.net/live. So what else is going on? We're in the second week of pickups on The Hobbit.
Oh my gosh.
And we think that it's a lot of bridge material. We're getting a lot of spy reports that our careful senior editors are validating and making sure what's real and what's not, and what we're supposed to talk about. But what we do know is that Gandalf had a birthday on Saturday, Sir Ian McKellen, and there were fireworks. And the reports that we're getting from the actors and the crew that were at Ian McKellen's birthday on Saturday say it was a party befitting of a wizard.
Oh, that sounds wonderful.
If you have fireworks, of course. This is so good. So I'm wondering, I haven't heard of any reshoots going on in London. So I don't know if we're going to see much more of Christopher Lee. Does Saruman have a role to play?
Whatever they had
later
shot
in the story?
Whatever they had shot for Christopher Lee, I think they completed all those shots in London when they were there.
Did he have much of a role in The Hobbit?
No. Saruman does not appear ever in the pages of The Hobbit. The fact that he's in the film is a construct of pulling material from appendices, the appendices in the back of The Return of the King, and putting them flush forward right into The Hobbit. That's why Christopher Lee is there.
So that supports my theory that the first movie, Hobbit: An Unexpected Journey, is complete fan service. They had to get all the fans on board with what this trilogy is going to be, that they had to service the fans. So
Yes.
put Saruman in there because it wouldn't be a Tolkien movie without the biggest Tolkien person in the world, Christopher Lee.
Yes.
And we want to see Saruman, and we want to see the whole dinner party, and and maybe that these are remnants of when Guillermo del Toro was going to take it in a different visual direction, maybe a darker tone, and the first act, the first movie was, supposed to, service the fans. That way the fans would go along with Guillermo on this journey. Well,
Yes.
The movie, I have a feeling the next two Hobbit movies are going to be stronger and faster
I do too.
than the first movie.
I do too. I do as well. Because they're going to actually pay attention to the story, pushing everything forward to its
having some ham.
dramatic, inevitable conclusion, this confrontation with the dragon, and the fact that the elves and the elven kingdom in Mirkwood is going to know exactly what's going on, that Thorin is on his way back to Erebor, and that little glimpse, that tiny little glimpse that we get of Lee Pace as Thranduil from the beginning of An Unexpected Journey.
On the elk?
Yes, on the war moose, on the giant old elk.
Elk.
We're going to see this character fully fleshed out and realized, and there's going to be a lot of plot, a lot more story about what these different people want and what their conflicting interests are concerning the quest. So this is going to be very interesting. I'm quite sure. It is...
What are the rumors of Viggo Mortensen? Rumors are Viggo is in New Zealand. We don't know if he's filming anything.
What?
But the rumors are, the whispers in the air are that he's filming some bridge material that is supposed to be between episode 3 and 4.
Let's just say again, this is rumors.
Rumors! Whispers of...
Unsubstantiated rumors, yes.
Whispers.
Whispers in the wind.
Speaking of whispers in
That
the
might
wind...
be like just the wind in the trees. It might not be actual information, but we'd love it if it were true. The idea of having Viggo do anything at all in relation to these three films, even if he appears in a brief, super brief
Saruman.
little scene with just a little bit of dialogue.
like
Yeah,
Saruman.
he only needs to be on screen for a minute, not much, you know? Yeah. Oh my gosh.
The interesting
I'm excited.
The interesing thing is that
I'm excited.
we just started. We're in the middle of planning for San Diego Comic-Con, which is going to be absolutely spectacular.
Oh boy.
And if you remember, last year we broke the news live. You were with us. You were with us while we were streaming from the iPads. That Peter Jackson said for the very first time in public. This was the very first hint that we ever had.
Yes.
That we're not going to do 2 movies. We're going to do 3 movies. You saw it live, and even then, I remember we got to post a news story. And remember, you, me, and Mr. Sear were and you guys were just like, I think we should validate this. This seems a little too intense. Like a 3 movie scoop. Remember that? And I was the one that was just kind of like, oh, we gotta get this out. And
Yes.
you guys were like, hold, right? Take a breath. That's how I feel right now about the news of Viggo Mortensen. That's how I feel. I feel like this is a very strong rumor, but it is a total rumor, and you are completely right.
As strong as a rumor it may be, we would like to add the caveat emptor, buyer beware, that we're in the business of disseminating news and facts, and when we know the difference between the two, what is fact and what is a rumor, then we'll share that distinction with you. We'll make sure that you guys know what's real and what's rumor. But in the meantime, it wouldn't hurt. We're just saying, hello, Warner Brothers, Peter Jackson, hello, Viggo, hello out there. We know you're shooting down in New Zealand right now, and we know that you guys are watching because we know you guys do. Guess what? We would love that if Aragorn actually has a reason
for the 3rd movie
to show up. It would be really a nice, cool thing. I know that it's not about The Hobbit to have Aragorn stuck in there for some random reason. A lot of people would complain who are thinking that The Hobbit serves its own purpose in the Legendarium, and you don't need to, add all this other stuff. But I'm all for it. I personally think it's a great idea. So, if you guys really are doing it, then bim salabim, you have my blessing. I think it's great.
You know, it was a huge weekend. This weekend was a huge weekend for Bard the Bowman.
Was it?
Who I think is going to have his most significant role is in the second movie. I think doesn't he just show up during the second movie, and that's the extent of Bard the Bowman?
Bard is going to be in the entire rest of the story.
Oh, he is.
So he'll be in the second and the third film.
In a significant role in the third film.
Quite significant.
Okay.
Quite significant.
So, but again, we don't have a trailer yet. Rumor is it's on Man of Steel. But Bard the Bowman had a huge weekend. In fact, a record-breaking weekend. Luke Evans plays Bard the Bowman. He is also the bad guy
in Fast and Furious
6.
Fast and Furious 6.
Which just opened worldwide.
What? Wait, in the United States it made $68.1 million?
More than that, twice that.
It's just its opening Memorial Day weekend.
I think it's the third biggest Memorial Day of all time.
Oh my gosh, that's nuts.
$350 million worldwide.
Worldwide?
In one weekend.
Oh man, really?
It's crazy.
For a bunch of racing cars and explosions?
It's a great movie, though.
Well, you got Vin Diesel, Luke Evans.
Paul Walker.
Oh, but Paul Walker, of course.
The Rock.
Oh, yes, The Rock. Oh,
Michelle Rodriguez.
He doesn't call himself The Rock anymore. It's Dwayne Johnson. Dwayne Johnson.
Ludacris, Tyrese.
Ludacris and Tyrese together.
Yeah,
wow. Well, there's enough testosterone in that movie to, you know.
And there's a couple other girls that I don't remember the names, but they're super cute.
Yes,
and
super cute.
It is such an ensemble cast of black, white, brown, Asian, Mexican.
It's the Colors de Benetton action movie is what it is.
It's such just a fun movie. And I tell you what, stay for the credits. There's an amazing scene at the end that just, like, it's amazing. But Luke Evans plays a great
Did you see it?
figure, and I can't wait.
It? Yeah. You saw Fast and Furious 6?
I can't wait until Bard the Bowman.
I just saw The Great Gatsby last night, which was really
on
really
the opposite spectrum.
On the opposite spectrum of race cars and explosions, but it was really good. It was really really good, and I don't understand why it's getting such mixed reviews. It's really a good movie, and I thought it was perhaps a little over literal, but you know that's something that the new Star Trek film and The Great Gatsby have in common. They literalize a lot of things and kind of spoon feed the audience everything they need to know. You know, no guesswork involved.
Right.
So, you know,
Star Trek was guilty as charged.
But
you don't have to think about anything.
I thought it was exciting and very good.
It was
Star
fun.
Trek movie.
And you know, Smaug and the Necromancer plays a great character. John Harrison in Star Trek. So
James, is it John? It might be John Harrison. Yes, John Harrison. Yeah. Yes. So now let's.
Lee Evans said all the Hobbit cast were going to watch Fast 6 together. Yeah, Luke Evans tweeted this weekend after Ian McKellen's birthday on Sunday. Luke Evans said that him and the whole Hobbit cast were going to go see Fast 6 together, or Furious 6. But what, just like, there's so much love going on set right now, where many tweets from the whole cast, and people got movies out in theaters right now. Like, this is just the start of an amazing 2013 film.
It's a huge year especially for us geeks. Geek cinema is massively exploding. Zack Snyder is about to unleash Man of Steel on all of us. M. Night Shyamalan is about to unleash another one of his movies on us. Oh, Lordy.
Yes.
Look out for that. Anyways, and then we've got to look forward to, through the rest of this summer, we're going to have Pacific Rim. Coming out very, very soon. The movie that took Guillermo del Toro out of The Hobbit.
Mm-hmm.
Was his effort to do Pacific Rim. It's coming right up around the corner. And then, you know, later on in the year, of course, we have, what else do we have as far as major geek cinema?
I don't know.
We've got the next Catching Fire. We've got the next Hunger Games film, as well as The Hobbit, of course, near the end of the year. And not to be outdone, when is Thor 2 coming out?
Thor 2 is like in the fall. Monsters University
is a few weeks away. Yeah, Thor 2, fast on the heels of Iron Man 3, which is still dominating
Still
the box
like
office.
crazy. It's
Oh,
making
yes.
so much money. I really hope The Hobbit 2 is better than The Hobbit 1. And I got called out by the fans on our Facebook for saying Hobbit 2 instead of DOS, Desolation of Smaug. Like, give it the respect it deserves.
Really?
And so, and I'm still going to call it Hobbit 2. Because
I'll call it Part 2, I'll call it Part 3, but yeah, DOS, the Hobbit Disk Operating System is what I call it sometimes.
Right.
The Hobbit DOS, that's what I call it. But getting back to Bifur and Bofur and Bombur, okay.
Everybody always gets these three mixed up. Now, these Bifur, Bofur, Bombur are brothers in the book.
Indeed, they are.
So let's trace it back to, who's the oldest. Like, where do they fit into the age brackets?
Well, it seems to me that Bombur was born in 2941, okay? And we have a note here for Bifur, born also in 2941. It seems that they were, tentatively born in the exact same age. And then we've got Bofur, and it says right here that he was also 2941. According to the only available information, it seems that they're all about the exact same age. However, Bombur and Bofur were more closely related as brothers, and Bifur was their cousin.
Bifur is a cousin.
Bifur is a cousin
All right, so
of Bofur and Bombur.
The big dude and the dude with the hat are brothers, and the Bifur is the cousin. Now,
and Bifur is the unfortunate fellow who has the orc axe crammed in his head, and he's the one who does not speak English, or the common speech.
Well, they say he doesn't speak, and in fact, on the press materials for The Hobbit,
which I have right here, the press materials for The Hobbit.
They said that Bifur has an axe in his head, and it caused him to lose his sense of speech, so he doesn't talk, but he grunts like a dwarf.
But he also no. He actually does speak in ancient Khuzdul, according to this. Look at this. It says right here that Bifur stands out. Bifur, played by William Kircher, he stands out because the only dialogue he has is ancient Khuzdul, ancient Dwarvish. And I don't know how much this holds true to the canon of Tolkien, but according to the press notes of The Hobbit, it says here that he's had a head injury, so he can only speak in ancient Dwarvish. And unfortunately, nobody understands him, not even his fellow dwarves. Only Gandalf.
Now, is that
only Gandalf understands the ancient Dwarvish.
Ancient Dwarvish.
And in An Unexpected Journey, the only person who acknowledges, Bifur is Gandalf. Gandalf says, yes, quite right, Bifur, because he grunts something that sounds sort of like Dwarvish, but it doesn't get a subtitle, so we don't know exactly. So many other bits of Orcish and other languages get full subtitles in the Hobbit movie. You'll notice that Bifur doesn't get any subtitles at all, so nobody knows what he's saying.
That's one of the discrepancies. Is this true to the book, or did Peter Jackson make this up?
No, it's completely made up. We've never ever had a dwarf depicted by Tolkien with an axe in his head and the inability to speak and interact.
So,
with
are
the
there
other
any?
That does not happen.
Are there
in the
any
book.
specific scenes in the book where Bifur does something or says something?
No, not really. Not much at all.
So he doesn't actually do anything.
A fan is asking in the room. The question in the room, in the chat room, is: did Bifur get that axe in his head at the Battle of Azanul Bazaar? Because we thought that we saw him there. I didn't see him in any of those shots. I definitely saw Dwalin and Balin and Thorin in that battle flashback. I didn't see William Kircher anywhere. And no, there's no information one way or the other where he got that axe in his
Blair
head.
in the chat room says bifurcation means to split in half. And Bifur, his head is split in half.
That's one of the... yeah, there you go. That's one of the things.
So you're telling me in the book that Bifur doesn't have much of any role to play. He's just a warm body. And so to make things easy, Peter Jackson said, well, if he's not doing anything, we'll just make him a mute.
Well, there are parts in when you read The Hobbit where you see Bofur and Bombur left behind to guard the ponies. Sometimes, you know, Tolkien makes just a passing note that...
Feeling Keely guard the ponies in the movie.
Well, in this part of the book, which is going to show up in the second film, where they're on the doorstep, looking for the secret door outside of the Lonely Mountain, it says right here, according to Tolkien, that only Bofur and Bombur were left behind to guard the ponies and such stores as they had brought with them from the river. The others all went down to the valley and up the newly found path to go up to the ledge where you're supposed to stand by the grey stone, where the thrush knocks. As you know, that comes from the Dwarven map. So, no, we really don't get... We don't get much real distinctions from Tolkien about Bifur or Bofur, but we do about Bombur. Bombur is the very, very heavy one, and he knows everything about food and cooking, and he is the group's cook.
Bombur,
yes,
the
he's the group's cook. Yeah, the big guy.
You know,
Yes.
usually in almost every story and in every movie and everything, the big dude is the cook.
Yes.
Unless you're watching a Steven Seagal film. But
That's funny.
Bombur
That's very funny.
doesn't actually have any lines in the movie. Does he talk a lot in the book?
Well, in the book, we only know that Biffer and Bofur play clarinets, and that Bombur plays a large drum. They've got all these musical instruments in the opening chapter of the Hobbit book.
Right.
But there's nothing else specific about these dwarven relatives being unique to one another in their actions and their aptitude, or some specific plot points that they get involved with. It's really something that let the filmmakers have the chance to go carte blanche and make up anything that they wanted to make up. Do you know what I mean? And someone in the room has just said, oh, Tech Priest says that Biffer was in mid-background in the after-battle scene, without an axe in his head. Okay, so Tech Priest definitely says that they have seen Biffer, who is William Kircher. He has the black and the white all over his wig and the axe in his forehead. That's Biffer. Bofur is the gentleman whom you are impersonating today.
Right.
Played by James Nesbitt.
I always get...
Who's got that great singing voice.
I never remember who Biffer is, because he has no role in the story.
And he speaks nothing that the audience recognizes.
He speaks nothing. It doesn't focus. I noticed there were multiple scenes with the guy with the horn in his ear.
That's Owen.
I know.
Yes.
But there weren't any scenes that specifically go into having an axe in your head. He's just kind of background.
Yeah.
He's like a featured extra. And William Kircher, he's been in so many things.
Yes.
Like this is like a choice role, and not even it's a poor role in a choice movie, right?
Yeah, you could say that.
Someone of the caliber of William Kircher, who
is wonderful,
great voice. William Kircher, look him up. He's been around, and they cover his face up with this big old beard. It's black and white. You know, it's kind of got gray stripes going on. He's got the axe in his head.
Yes, he does.
He's a mute, and he's not a mute, but for the most part, he doesn't actually do anything. So he's kind of one. If of all the characters in The Hobbit, of all the dwarves, he's the most forgettable.
In the film.
Yep. He's the most forgettable. Biffer doesn't, unless Peter Jackson surprises us, but I don't think he will. He will, because there's so many other new characters being introduced, and new characters to Tolkien people, and just new characters to the films. So I think Biffer, he's forgettable. So we've spent too much time talking about a guy that
how much more will he get to have in the movie when he doesn't get dialogue that relates to anybody?
Right, and
I wonder.
And there's no background in Tolkien's writings. There's no background on this guy other than he's the cousin.
Yes.
So let's get to the brothers' food, the brothers' fun food and fun. I'm gonna call it because
Food and fun.
because Bombur and Bofur have the most recognizable views. Bofur,
Bofur has some great scenes with Martin Freeman. In the
amazing
movie.
scenes.
Yes, great scenes.
And I think that relationship's going to continue.
Yes.
Because if you notice
I agree with
on
that.
all the press interviews,
Yes.
James Nesbitt has been in all the press interviews. When they say, "Hey, who's a big enough star that people want to talk to?" James Nesbitt is at the hotels, doing interviews. And Bomber, he's just the big guy. He doesn't really say much, but I tell you, Bomber has my favorite scene in the trailer, which is catching the egg in the mouth.
Yes, that was really fun.
So
And then there's the slapstick jokes about him being so overweight. They throw him a sausage and he catches it, and the table breaks.
And
We've got all that stuff going on.
so does Tolkien give us any background on Bofur and Bombur?
Yeah, Bombur in the whole book. Bombur is said to be related, Bombur and Bofur, played by, Bofur is played by James Nesbitt.
Yes.
Bombur played by Stephen Hunter.
Stephen Hunter.
Who's
Not that big.
Stephen Hunter's a great guy, and he's not that huge. They've put him in an immense fat suit. But Bombur has a very successful Twitter campaign going called Team Bombur. And Stephen Hunter has been running his Twitter a mile a minute, which is what you have to do to make your Twitter successful. He's run his Twitter account with hashtag Team Bombur. So if you ever want to find out what's going on in the world of Stephen Hunter and what things are going on with his character, just do a search for hashtag Team Bombur.
That's it. That's his
Yeah.
official account.
No. That's his hashtag that he uses all the time.
Oh,
he has his own normal account. But
what is it?
For Stephen Hunter,
Yeah, I'm trying to find it.
I would
His
search on Twitter. You'll find Stephen Hunter immediately on Twitter. You'll find it. And here's what we know about these two.
he has nothing on Wikipedia.
No, it's a funny thing. He doesn't. And you'd think that he would.
Yeah.
But while I continue to nibble on this tasty smoked ham, and
tasty ham.
very tasty ham,
So
I've got to say that Bofur is the guy who I recognize as having that Mongolian hat
Yes.
and that great singing voice. And
He's always looks like he's leading the song.
And he also looks like he's the one who's most interested in teasing Bilbo. He teases Bilbo to the point of making him faint.
Yes.
He teases him and teases him.
And doesn't he tease him when they're getting on the horses?
Yeah. And then he also has a nice rapport with Bilbo, and he says to him very sincerely, I really wish you luck. I really do.
Yeah.
I really wish you luck wherever you want to go, wherever you think you're going to fit in. But if you're leaving, then gosh, why are you just leaving us like this? But he's got that look in his eye. He's got that sympathetic look in his eye.
Yeah.
And it's played very well by
He's
James
honest.
Nesbitt. He's really, really great. We know that...
Stephen J. Hunter 1. That's his Twitter.
That's correct. Stephen J. Hunter 1.
So Bombur. So when it comes to the books, who's got the deeper backstory from Tolkien?
Bombur.
Bombur.
Bombur, because he's the focus of so much physical comedy.
In the book.
In the book, he is so much. Here's a part in the book where Bombur has fallen in. Bombur is drowning, he cried. It was only too true. Bombur had only 1 foot on the land when the heart bore down on him and sprang over him, meaning the deer.
Okay.
The deer sprang over him. He stumbled, thrusting the boat away from the bank, and then he toppled back into the dark water. We're going to get this whole big thing where Bombur, the heavy guy,
Yeah.
falls into an enchanted sleeping stream. And everybody else is forced to carry Bombur around while he's under the magical charm of this river, which has knocked him out cold.
So the water in with the Ents made the hobbits grow tall.
And there's another enchanted
And the
stream
water here
that has a different forest with a different stream with a different effect.
and this one makes you sleep.
Not correlated to the Entwash. Not correlated at all. Okay.
So all the water's tainted everywhere.
Yep. So they were still standing over him, cursing their ill luck and Bombur's clumsiness. So Bombur's clumsiness is something that Tolkien wrote about. Therefore, it's a lot more specific than Bifur gets. Tolkien doesn't give as many details about Bifur or
Yeah,
Bofur as he does Bombur.
Biffer, we'll just stop talking about Biffer. Unless
Yes.
Peter Jackson surprises us, he's a throwaway character.
Well, this is a character who's got to have something to do, even though he's only going to be speaking ancient Khuzdul, and nobody can understand him.
All right, so
He has got to have something to do.
Bombur is one of the most fleshed out supporting characters in the book. Bombur, just because of his size,
Yeah.
he is the point of a lot of comedy, a lot of physical comedy, and so
And that's why it surprises me he had no dialogue in the movie.
so
That really surprised me.
why did Peter Jackson decide to lessen Bombur's role? Why did Peter Jackson decide to give? Didn't we talk about a couple other scenes that were originally Bombur that Peter Jackson gave to a different character? Didn't Ophelia and Keely have some stuff that were meant actually in the book meant for other characters?
Yeah, they've been switching some things around.
But Bombur,
It's true.
we had such amazing performance in Lord of the Rings from John Rhys Davies,
Yes.
and they always went for the easy jokes. They went for the dwarf jokes. Toss a dwarf. The short. I don't run very fast. I eat a lot. I drink a lot. Blah blah blah. Like on paper, all the jokes that Gimli says, they're very juvenile. I mean, I heard those in 4th grade. Like primary school jokes. But when they were said by John Rhys Davies as Gimli, they didn't come across as childish jokes. It's like the bridge is falling, the steps are falling. He's like, nobody tosses a dwarf. Like that should have been like just comedic genius, but it was played so impactfully that you're caught up in the moment. Like it didn't come off as cheesy. Nothing Gimli did, I feel, came off as cheesy in Lord of the Rings. So here we have kind of not a similar character, but basically similar character where he's there for a lot of physical comedy. Bombur is the physical comedy, just like in The Hobbit, just like Gimli was the physical comedy.
Exactly.
In Lord of the Rings. So
exactly.
Why is Peter Jackson kind of going pulling back away from the physical comedy when it's there? And give it to him, and let Stephen Hunter go with it. Like he's a funny guy. You were on set.
Yes, he's very funny, and I'm sure we're going to see more of Stephen Hunter's comedy and his instinctual talents. We'll see more of that in the second film.
Okay.
But the funny thing is, in the book, basically, if you were reading Tolkien and had never ever seen anything from Peter Jackson's films, you would walk away from Tolkien and say, the only dwarves who get any airtime are Thorin, Balin, and Bombur. They get the most airtime in the book.
Right.
In that order.
Thorin,
Balin, and Bombur. And that is exactly true because I'm coinciding with what one of our fans has said in the room, and I think you're quite correct. There's a young person in our room who just said that of the dwarves that get mentioned the most, and
of those three, Bombur's end is known.
Oh, okay, so, Brighter Moon. Hello, Neil. Brighter Moon has found a picture of Bombur being carried in the film. Oh, okay.
Okay, Brighter Moon, different tones, Justin. You can't compare The Hobbit to Lord of the Rings. Actually, you can. Look, the books...
Thank you, Blair. Thank you for the
The books can have different tones. And in fact, Tolkien is a revisionist author. After Lord of the Rings was published, he went back and rewrote The Hobbit, so some of the characters and some of the themes are a little stronger. So they coincide. There's nothing wrong with comparing Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit films. When it comes to films, these two need to mesh. They need to go together.
Yes, they do.
So, and I have faith that Peter Jackson is going to do much better than another prequel director. But so basically, we're saying is Bombur is the one character from the book that was most scaled down by Peter Jackson and the writers.
It seems unfortunate that Bombur would be scaled down at all because he does have so much comedy in the book. And look at this. What Bombur understands is that his cooking and his passion for food is, really there from the book to the screen. And this is what the actor Stephen Hunter says in the press materials.
Okay.
Bombur is the biggest dwarf, though he is not tall like Thorin or Dwalin. Let's not beat around the bush. He's the fat dwarf. He, Bofur, and Biffer are pretty rough characters. They're the scrappers, and they can hold their own in a fight. Well, they were never dwarven noblemen. They were never dwarves of upper class. Not that we even understand such a class system in dwarven society, but it must be so. Bifur, Bofur, and Bombur were just workers. Just working class, blue-collar guys, working in the West Virginia mines, digging out coal, doing their lives.
That's why you can see that...
And you wonder psychologically what would compel them to go on this journey.
Money.
Money. The thrill of it. Thrill seekers.
Money.
Maybe they were adventure seekers. Thrill seekers.
How many guys are out there like drilling for oil in North Dakota? Nobody wants to live in North Dakota. or the Canadian tar sands.
Or South Dakota, where Jay Gatz originally was from.
Or the
Gatsby reference.
So Bombur. So basically, Bombur. He will have a bigger role in the next two films.
Yes, I mean, and in his future life, Tolkien even mentions that he gets so huge and fat at the end of his life
Python huge.
that it takes 6 other dwarves to pick him up.
Like Monty Python.
He can't
huge.
physically get up anymore. Yeah, like Monty Python huge.
Remember that?
Later in his life, Professor Tolkien tells us that Bombur gets so heavy he cannot get up himself. He is no longer ambulatory, and it takes 6 other dwarves to lift him up.
So he's the most American of the dwarves.
Yeah, he's the one with a weight problem.
So
evidently,
when it comes to
but
Bombur,
I always remembered him as a kid as being, the poor dwarf who falls asleep with that enchanted stream, and the first thing that he says when he wakes up is, "I'm hungry." And it's such a great line, as everybody has said in the chat room. It's a funny bit.
Bombur,
I hope that Stephen Hunter gets to have some dialogue.
I hope
he
so
gets
too.
to say it. It's really funny.
And Bombur had such a significant role in the book, and Bombur is most readers' favorite dwarf. When it comes to the supporting cast, Bombur is usually everybody's favorite, and it's every kid's favorite.
Yes,
because
that's true.
You immediately identify with it. So,
and that's why it was so smart for Stephen Hunter to do Team Bombur on his Twitter feed to get people more engaged with him.
Let me ask you this: I say because of the significance of Bombur's role in the book, and because of the importance, not necessarily importance of the character, but just the overall culture around Bombur and how people should they have made a bigger casting decision than Stephen Hunter? A local New Zealand actor, a jobbing actor. If you go to his profile, he's hardly done any movies. He's done a lot of soap operas in New Zealand.
Yes, he has.
He's not like he's not Marvin Aday, Meatloaf. He's not some other like well-known portly actors or entertainers or whatever.
Yes.
That you're gonna get buried in makeup anyway. And Stephen Hunter is not as big as Bombur. Like he's wearing a huge, fatter suit, and there's so many actors that have bigger names that have more box office awareness.
Yes.
And I'm sure there's a bunch from the Harry Potter series. There were some great actors that are maybe a little larger than life that I think could have just killed it.
Yes, given the opportunity.
Here's
the thing that's different from this version of The Hobbit that Peter Jackson is doing, compared to the 1977 animated The Hobbit that Rankin and Bass did.
Right.
Bombur dies at the end of that animated film. Half of the traveling party of Thorin and company are dead by the end of that animated film.
Yeah.
But in The Hobbit, in the book, Bombur does not die, and he actually lives on and stays in the kingdom of Erebor, which is reestablished. And the Billy Connolly character, Dane, from the Iron Hills, he'll be there too. But
most Lord of the Rings actors were nobodies.
You listen to the dialogue in the animated Hobbit from 1977, and Bilbo asks Gandalf, "Of our original 13, how many are left?" And Bilbo has asked this question not knowing who of his companions are dead. And Gandalf says, 7. There's 7 left alive. And that's not exactly the way it happens in the book. I don't know what Peter Jackson has in store, because we know that some characters are heading for a tragic end, Some characters are not headed for a tragic end. And because he's got so many indistinct dwarves to mess around with, it's quite possible that Fran Walsh and Peter Jackson and Philippa Boyens, the writers, may be inclined to do away with a whole bunch of other characters who, you know, die in the Battle of the Five Armies, but we don't know what their ultimate fate will be.
Who played Harry Potter's stepfather?
That stepfather, who was the big heavy actor who plays his stepdad, his adopted.
Yeah.
It's his uncle. It's Uncle Dursley.
Yes.
Mr. Dursley, who played Uncle Dursley, who he also shows up in the movie Hugo.
Yes.
He's in Hugo, and I love that guy.
He's very funny. I think he would have killed it.
As Bombur?
As Bombur.
Yeah, he would have.
Also, I think who's the guy in Topsy
But
Turvy?
then I would have been a hell of a. Oh, that's Jim Broadbent.
Jim Broadbent.
Jim
Put
Broadbent.
a fat suit on that guy.
He would have been great.
He could have acted through that.
He would have been great
through that suit. So, knowing what we know about the process of filmmaking and editing, okay, you have so much going on, and Peter Jackson is a master filmmaker and editor. But at the end of the day, when you're editing the whole movie together,
yes,
and you notice you have an edit, you're editing all these pieces, and you're like, on the day when you were shooting it, he's like, oh, that was a great performance from Stephen Hunter.
Yes.
Maybe there's a reason he doesn't have any lines in an Unexpected Journey. I mean, you know, when you compare all these, you know, strong dialogue from Thorin and Ian McKellen and everybody else, and then maybe there's a reason that I'm just saying maybe it's a performance reason that he doesn't have a lot of lines. And I'm saying that there were a lot of actors. Now, we love Stephen Hunter, and Bombur is going to be a bigger role, if you can believe it, in the next 2 movies. But I'm saying that
he better talk. He better talk.
Harry Potter's uncle, if I can remember his name,
Richard Griffiths. Thank you.
Would have killed it.
Thank you, as
an audience member, I would have immediately looked at that guy, recognized him, seen him in the press junket, seen him in the posters, and say, "Ha, that guy is funny. I can't wait to see what humor he's going to bring to the Hobbit."
Oh,
because
that's very sad. Richard Griffiths passed away. I didn't realize that.
Really?
Richard Griffiths passed away recently, so that means that Hugo was his last film performance. That's really sad. I really liked him.
Vernon Dursley.
Yes, he played
end of March. He just
recently died.
So theoretically, he could have shot it 2 years ago. 2 years ago, they shot this. So theoretically, man, that would have been weird.
I'm sorry to see you go, Mr. Griffiths. You were very funny. You were in a lot of movies and a lot of shows, and you were always
like
entertaining.
Others have said,
always entertaining. So my hat is off to you, Uncle Dursley, Uncle Vernon Dursley.
You know, people in the chat room are saying
so brilliant.
Desolation of Smaug is DOS. Maybe we start saying it in Spanish because it is number 2. Dos. Number 2. Dos. 2 in Spanish. It's dos.
Es dos. Es dos. Es aquí.
Dos.
Es dos. ¿Está bien? Sí.
Hobbit. Dos.
El Hobbito dos. Disk operating system.
It's just dos.
Wait a minute. You're going to tell me that you only want one thing from me? You want me to grand? Okay. I'll put on my hat. And I'll give you a grand. I'll give you a grand. I'll give you a grand.
Okay.
Grand. There you go. You got one. You got at least one. And who said there's no ham? What do you mean no ham?
There's plenty of ham.
There's plenty of ham.
Plenty of ham.
And roast chicken. Roast chicken.
And potatoes.
And potatoes.
All right, so
and there's ham and roast chicken and potatoes and there's a grand. You've got it all. What more do you want?
So wrapping up Bombur, I think he's the most negatively affected character in Peter Jackson's Middle-earth. I think Peter Jackson has lessened his character. I think
he did in the first film.
I think yeah.
Did.
Oh, so
he's got to have more to do in the second film.
I think the casting choice could have been stronger. I don't know. I'll hold judgment until the second movie and we start to see the Bombur shine. But I was expecting more, especially from the trailer. The moment in the trailer, in both trailers, where you see Bombur catch the egg in this, I'm like, yes, this guy's gonna be super fun. I can't wait. And then he doesn't really have a role in the first movie.
I was miffed. I was really actually miffed that Bombur did not have a single line of dialogue in the whole movie. I've been scratching my head about that the whole time. Even William Kircher gets a line of ancient Khuzdul. Yeah. He gets a line of dialogue, which is not subtitled, that nobody but Gandalf understands. But, you know, poor Stephen Hunter gets no dialogue at all. But he gets all the slapstick and all the fat jokes and all the furniture breaking, and he gets everything.
They're not even set up they just happen. There's no setup. There's always
that's
like
true. That's true.
You know what it's
Yeah. The
so
setup is not quite.
I think when it comes to it, just Peter Jackson, and we all know Peter Jackson lost a lot of weight after Lord of the Rings, and he went on this crazy diet.
Yes.
And we know Peter Jackson has dealt with weight, and so do you think maybe this character and his jokes have hit close to home? That Peter Jackson is kind of, pushing away from.
Do you think the director has a personal reason for not depicting the overweight guy?
Directors and writers bring their own experiences to this, and
True.
In the book, Bombur is played to perfection for the weight jokes, and here we are in the movies, and we don't see that. In fact, we see the setup, we see the payoffs, but there isn't focus on the weight jokes. And we know Peter Jackson, he was big. Like
the joke in Rivendell, when the thing he's sitting on breaks, that joke could have been built up with a little bit more creaking, a little bit more like close-ups of the creaking of the furniture, and it's James Nesbitt, Bofur. He recognizes what's happening. He's the only person who sees it, and he sees the joke. He's sitting next to his cousin Biffer, who's trying to roast a green leaf over the fire, and all of a sudden, James Nesbitt just goes, "Here, catch," and all of a sudden Bombur catches it, and the joke happens. There's no build-up.
There's no setup.
That's true. That's true.
So
even I know how to set up a joke. Yeah, I do.
So you get it.
I do. I get that.
I think
get that.
Bombur is closing out on Bombur. I think Peter Jackson just needs to get over the whole weight thing and deliver us some funny jokes, just like we got from Gimli in Lord of the Rings. He had a lot of childish fourth grade jokes, but they were delivered and edited so well. I think in every single Lord of the Rings movie, there's a dwarf tossing joke. Like the same joke 3 different times, but they all worked because of the performance, because of the directing, and because of the setup and the payoff.
Yeah,
all work.
There's a dwarf tossing joke in the Two Towers for sure.
At the end,
it's the fulfillment of the joke in Fellowship of the Ring, when they're in the Battle of Helm's Deep, and Aragorn is there with Gimli, and Gimli says, "I cannot make the distance. You'll have to toss me."
You're gonna have to toss me.
Yeah, but don't tell the elf.
Right.
Don't tell the elf.
So I mean, there's nothing wrong with
that
fat
doesn't happen
jokes.
in the third film.
There's nothing wrong with fat jokes, and I coming out of the Hobbit movie, I didn't feel that there was any exposure to the fat jokes.
Okay, I'll give you that. I'll give you that.
So moving on,
I'll give you that.
The third character, and probably the most important character of today's discussion, and probably the third most important dwarf in the movies, is Bofur. Bofur is the guy with this hat, with the crazy Asian hat. He looks very Asian. He's got a Fu Manchu thing going on.
He looks like a Mongol.
He looks like
He looks like he stepped off the great open desert steppe of Mongolia. He looks like
Can
he
I
stepped
stop with the assumptions? I'm not
out of
making
Mongolia.
assumptions. I'm just saying what is on screen and what is on book, and what the potential was, is lessened. So anyway, Bofur.
The potential for a character, Bofur, who doesn't get any meat and potatoes in the book at all of a sudden he's got all these great scenes of sympathy with Martin Freeman, and he's the guy who's teasing Martin Freeman the most in the scenes of The Unexpected Party, and Bofur is the guy who's got the funny dialogue saying, "Oh yes, you'll be incinerated in an instant," razor sharp claws. He's you know what a dragon is. You're about to get up close and personal with a dragon. Can you imagine you in front of this? And he causes Bilbo to faint.
Isn't he the one that says, "Smaug the Terrible"?
Yeah, the greatest and chiefest calamity of our age, or whatever he says. Whatever he says.
But the question is, why do we have ham on the show today? And why does everybody have an unhealthy obsession with ham in the chat room, especially Bofur's wife?
Yeah.
Bofur's wife. And maybe Bofur's wife, since the wife, she can tell us why Bofur is obsessed with ham. But the answer is that if you watch An Unexpected Journey, as they're leaving, Bofur goes back and grabs the ham.
He does.
And so Bofur steals from Bilbo. He takes the ham. Everybody else ate there, but left all the dishes, and they left them clean.
Yes.
They left their...
Where do you see Bofur take the ham?
You guys bring up the scene. Is it on YouTube?
Where does Bofur go back and take a ham? Nori is stealing a chain of sausages from the pantry.
Mm-hmm.
That's when Bilbo is saying, "Confusticate and be bother these dwarves." That's when he has that line. But where does Bofur... Oh, this is nice. Bofur's wife is using the correct English plural version of the word dwarf, which is dwarros.
Dwarros?
Dwarros is
I didn't know that.
That is the correct English plural for dwarf. And Tolkien knew that, and that's why he called the city in Moria as Dwarodelf, which means dwarf city. Yeah, Dwarodelf. Dwarodelf. You'll hear Gandalf use that word in the Fellowship of the Ring. Yes. Okay. Bilbo forgets his handkerchief. Bofur tears off a piece of his clothing and says it will serve.
Yeah, so that's part of the relationship Bofur has with Bilbo. You know, it's this ongoing thing of, you know, when they're on the horses. This is when they're on the horses, and he goes, "We're not going back," you know.
Yes, here. Try this.
Take this.
Bofur actually grabbed the ham when Bombur took the cheese. Okay, and Bofur keeps a hand on the ham.
Ham heist.
The whole time. So Bofur's like got his hand on that ham through the whole scene. I'm gonna have to rewatch that and see the details. Okay, thank you for pointing that out, guys.
I think we need to make a new T-shirt that is like Bofur and the ham.
Yeah, we should. We should. Do we still have that sale going on?
The sale ended yesterday.
Oh, drat!
At midnight.
Oh, drat!
I've got a lot of work to do.
Okay,
but,
yes. Well,
so,
I'll help you. I'll help you.
So Bofur steals the ham. He's always got his hand on the ham, and so Bofur's ham is a thing, and there's a ton of Tumblrs and blogs and things about Bofur's ham. Bofur and his ham.
Like things about Dwalin and his cookies.
So Bofur's the guy with the hat. Bofur's the guy with the ham. Hat and ham.
And the singing voice.
And he's the singing leader. And he always has the close-up, and he's like very terse, you know, during the singing song, and he's
yes, he does.
Always well lit. So I can't. So Bofur, he's the third most important dwarf. Is that true in the book?
Ask me one more time. Forgive me.
In the book, we just discussed it. In the movie, Bofur is the third most important dwarf. Right?
In the movie?
In the movie.
In terms of movie dialogue, you know, the most amount of dialogue is given to Thorin, Balin, and then Bofur. Bofur has the next third most dialogue.
Is that true in the book?
No, not at all.
Okay. What's Bofur's background? Bombur and Bofur are brothers, but you don't see that really in the movie at all. You don't see that. You can get Fili and Kili are brothers, absolutely. You can get Thorin and Dwalin. You understand that they're family. I don't get any sense that Bofur and Bombur are brothers.
You don't?
Not in the movie.
Really?
Not in the movie. There's no.
No, you don't.
It's
not mentioned. It's not mentioned.
There's nothing in the movie that says these two know each other stronger than they know everybody else.
That's funny. Well, let me see. I'm looking here in The Hobbit.
So, Bofur...
And I'm finding
everybody, a lot of people have a hard time remembering Bifur, Bofur, Bombur. Like, everybody knows Bombur because, like...
Bombur's the big guy.
The name Bombur feels like bomb. Feels like big round thing.
It feels like bombast. Bombast.
Yeah. Bifur and Bofur are so close to name, and one has absolutely no role, and the other one is crucially important in the movie. So, Bofur and Bofur's ham and Bofur's hat, get to know Bofur. Bofur. Get to know him because James Nesbitt is a wonderful, wonderful actor. He's one
Indeed
of
he
the
is.
most talented people. In fact, he's been at most of the press junkets. And in fact, if you go to our One Ring YouTube channel, we have an interview with our friend Green Dragon.
Yeah.
Sat down with James Nesbitt.
We do. Good.
There's a wonderful video interview that just happened like a month or two ago with James Nesbitt. So Bofur has a significant role to play in Martin Freeman's growth as a character.
Yeah, he does actually.
As Bilbo, and I have a feeling that you're going to see Bofur and Bilbo kind of connect on a deeper level. And in fact, I have to go watch it again. But if you watch the sneak preview that Peter Jackson gave a couple months ago when the Blu-ray came out, and they're on the boat, everybody's on the boat, and that's where they meet Bart the Bowman.
Yes.
And everything.
Yeah, that was very cool.
I think there was a
very cool.
a back and forth real quick between Bofur and Bilbo, and then Bard chimes in between those. Geez, there's so many names in The Hobbit with B's: Bilbo, Biffer, Bombur, Bofur, Bard, Balin.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's true.
Who else?
That's true.
Who, I guess is that it? Are there any other B's? Are there a Master of Light? No.
No,
Bane,
but
no.
there's a lot of bees. Yes, there's a lot of bees.
There's a lot of bees. Who's King of Goblins?
The Great Goblin.
Great. Oh, jeez.
There's Jeez, the Great Goblin.
Gee.
But there's a thing about these dwarven relationships that will be made much clearer when we do our final installment next week, when we do our last installment of discussing all the history of the dwarves within Thorin's company. We're going to finish off next week with Thorin Oakenshield, and we will talk in detail about the historical notes that Professor Tolkien wrote and then rewrote, and it was a great big
Rewrote?
It was a great big section of content that was published in Unfinished Tales. And that Unfinished Tales has a very cool, interesting section called The Quest of Erebor, and that's the bit of stuff that Tolkien wrote from Gandalf's point of view, with Gandalf explaining to Gimli at the end of the Lord of the Rings story.
Yeah.
Gandalf is explaining to Gimli why he convinced and how he convinced Thorin to take Bilbo with him on this journey. Indeed. It's going to be very, very, very interesting. We will talk about those notes, which ended up becoming a full, detailed narrative, and there's a couple of different versions of this narrative. The main narrative of the quest for Erebor you'll find published in Unfinished Tales. If you get a copy of the Annotated Hobbit, you'll get a more fully revised version of the quest of Erebor, and it explains why Gandalf did what he did and why he thought it was important for Thorin and this group of ragtag traveling dwarves to bring that particular little homebody of a hobbit along with them on the journey. And I've been looking through it. It's really fascinating. And the quest of Erebor includes such great insights as Gandalf saying, "Listen to me, Durin's folk. If you persuade this hobbit to join you, you will succeed. If you do not, you will fail. If you refuse to even try, then I have finished with you." Really strong words from Gandalf, really trying to persuade Thorin that bringing Bilbo along is a good idea.
That's not persuasion. That's just like
A
doing
threat.
it my way or the highway.
Yeah, Gandalf actually threatens.
So Gandalf knows Bilbo has a role to play.
He does. He does very, very much indeed. And he's...
So why is Bofur have such a significant role? Cause obviously we see in the movies that Bofur is connecting with Bilbo a lot more than the other dwarves. Both, it doesn't matter good or bad. Like he's just, has this,
It's a funny thing that Bofur is in that part with that sympathetic dialogue with Martin Freeman, because in the book it is Balin who builds the strongest friendship over the course of time.
So
with
I'm
Bilbo.
wondering if that's going to be a consistent thing. People in the
At
chat
that-
room are saying,
It's Balin.
we have to wait until Balin and Bilbo build up their friendship. And
we get a glimpse of that with them sitting at the Rivendell table together, and he's looking at his sword, hoping that
That's
his
a
sword
letter
might
opener.
have a name, and he makes a joke about a letter opener. But
what if Peter Jackson is changing that? Maybe,
I don't know.
What if Bofur is?
I don't know, but Balin is a very special friend to Bilbo, and Dory is a very nice fellow, as Bilbo describes him as an altogether decent fellow. But the fact is, none of the other dwarves are recorded in the books as ever going back to visit and hang out with Bilbo, except Balin. Balin is the one who comes back to visit Bilbo as a friend and to relax, without the pressure of going on a quest or anything.
And
just
then Balin
wants
goes to his death in Moria.
And then Balin eventually goes to reclaim Moria.
So a question
Yes.
in the chat room saying they just joined, but
Welcome.
they heard that Bombur is married and has tons of kids. Is there any?
Who says that?
Is there any? It's just
I guessed. I've just mentioned this before, but I heard that Bombur was married and has tons of kids. You know what, guest? I have no information from the books at all that Bombur carried on any family line. There's no mention of that anywhere that I can find. So wherever you found that, I'd be curious to know where that came from.
Yeah. So
I'll look it up. But
so
I didn't
what are
see
the
anything.
what significant role, if any, does Bofur have a significant role in the book?
No.
Does he stand out?
No, not as Balin, Dory, Bombur, and of course Thorin. Those are the 4 dwarves out of the 13 that really, really stand out in Tolkien's story. Fili and Kili stand out because of their direct parentage and lineage being Thorin's sister's sons. Otherwise, you've got all these dwarves that are rather, unfortunately, rather nondescript.
So does Bofur have any significant scenes later in the book or later in the story?
Bofur?
Bofur.
No, not in the book. No.
So
There's
basically,
no significant
he's
scenes.
as much in the book. He's as much of a throwaway as Biffer.
Yeah.
Biffer, Bombur are just there. So actually, Bofur has the biggest increase.
Biggest increase in visibility and the biggest increase in individualism from a nondescript character in Tolkien to a very fully fleshed out character in the film who has a friendship and a sympathetic understanding with Bilbo.
And he's there for comedic relief. He is the straight guy to all the jokes.
Yeah, he's setting up the fat jokes for his brother.
He sets up the jokes. He throws the eggs. He throws the leaf.
Yeah.
He tosses
throws the
thing
sausage
to
that he
Bilbo.
catches.
He throws the piece of clothing to Bilbo.
Yep, he does.
So he
tries to stop Bilbo from leaving in the middle of the night when
Yeah.
Bilbo is leaving the Goblin Cave. And then, of course, Bilbo doesn't leave fast enough, and, the trap doors open up and they've been captured by the goblins.
So why do you think Peter Jackson enhanced Bofur's role?
I have no idea why.
Do you think that was
no idea
based on casting? Do you think they realized that they had they had access to James Nesbitt, and do you think he was up for a different role, and they said, you know what, we're going to make you this
I don't
character,
know.
and do you think they rewrote?
I'd be curious. I would be very curious to see all the other stuff they shot for these other dwarves that didn't make it into theatrical cut. There will be an extended version of The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey. Lord knows that movie doesn't need to be any longer than it is, but there
it will
will
be
be an extended edition of The Hobbit.
23 minutes.
A-U-J.
So
AUJ.
but the question is,
That question may be answered at that time.
did the writers
when we see more material with the dwarves?
Did the writers enhance Bofur's role, or did Peter Jackson's casting of James Nesbitt allowed them to enhance that role?
Good question. I
Because
don't
both
know.
Biffer and Bofur are throwaway characters in the book. They're
Yes.
they have no significant story. But we see that that Bofur
It could be
got
safely said.
James Nesbitt, and he's been
Yeah.
doing all the press junkets. Like, he's that significant.
It could be safely said that Tolkien could have written The Hobbit without Bifur or Bofur, and there would have been no impact on the story as it was written. The great, important interactions happen between Thorin, Balin, and Bombur, and Dory gets a nice mention every now and then, but
knowing what we know about filmmaking, so
Yes.
suddenly you have access to a wonderful actor in James Nesbitt.
Yes.
And they say, we
Yes.
just can't. We got to make your role more meaty. We got to give this guy a little something. He has some chops.
Yeah,
You know,
he does.
He has some acting chops. Let's beef up this guy's role. And the thing in the movie is his role isn't any more significant to the storyline. What it is his character development. And so why did Bofur, James Nesbitt, get all these wonderful scenes to show that this character, interacting with people, and yet Bombur got his stuff pulled way back?
I wonder. I'm
Because
very
that is
curious.
antithetical.
It's antithetical,
to
yeah.
what's in this book.
Look at how much Tolkien writes about Bombur and how much Tolkien writes about Bofur. That's how much is written in the books. But in the films, this is how much Peter, Fran, and Philippa have written about Bofur and how much they give Bombur to say. It's totally different from what Tolkien did.
So
that is true, and I'm left scratching my head.
do you think James Nesbitt
It's
is
a mystery.
Tolkien fan? Do you think he requested to be this? Do you think?
I don't know.
Yeah. Do you think?
I would venture a guess that there's some other juicy bits with the other dwarves that are on the cutting room floor, and we'll just see them when we see them
love to have
in the
a
extended version.
discussion. Next time there's a press junket, we need to get these questions answered.
Yes, let's ask the writers. Let's talk to Philippa and
And
Fran.
James.
No. Fran will not be at Comic-Con, but Philippa will.
Hopefully.
Philippa, who co-writes with Fran and Peter Jackson, Philippa will be very, very glad to talk about character development and the changes from the book to the screen, because she's a hardcore Tolkien fan
knows.
herself.
You know-
She's another version of Stephen Colbert. She's that much of a Tolkien fan and a playwright, and that's why it was appropriate for her to come on board as a writer for Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit.
One of the big
I'm gonna ask her, Philippa, why did you change the dwarf?
Here's my theory.
Importance.
I'll tell you my
Why did
theory
you do
is
that?
that The Hobbit was originally going to be directed by Guillermo del Toro, and he did 2 years of pre-production.
And previs. Oh, yes, he did.
He was knee deep,
Yes.
and there are a lot of elements in The Hobbit, and I'm sure in the next 2 movies where you'll see remnants of Guillermo del Toro's influence. And of all the things in the Hobbit movies that look like Guillermo's influence, it is Bofur. There's something about the hat and the Fu Manchu hair and the increased presence.
You think?
And
You think that's
the
a
heightened
holdover
role.
from Del Toro?
I just have it just seems like
It's possible.
that of all the things in The Hobbit that Bofur's character, who is a throwaway in the book, Guillermo del Toro plucked this guy and said, "You know what? I can do something with this. What an opportunity here, because he's brothers with the fat guy.
Yes.
So if you're gonna have a Laurel and Hardy thing, better make it brothers.
They can work out a lot of comedy.
They
between
can
the two
work
of them.
out a
Yes.
lot of, but we don't see that interaction in Peter Jackson's movie. And I'll bet you, look at a lot of the comedy in Hellboy and that dialogue between the 2 main characters.
Between Abe Sapien and Hellboy.
Is that there's a lot of straight man fall guy set up, the whole deal. And I have a feeling that based on his look, based on his increased presence, based on some of the jokes that were played out, that I think that Guillermo del Toro's handprint fingers are on Bofur, and I'd love to get some feedback from any of the people involved, whether it's Nesbitt, Fran,
I would too.
Even Guillermo. Like,
Yeah.
where are your fingers kind of in the mold, in the putty? Because it
great.
just that's my theory that that Guillermo was setting up Bofur and Bombur as brothers, fat guy, skinny guy, throwing each other jokes
and throwing each other articles of food and
we don't-
slapstick.
and
Yeah,
we-
I get that.
And we don't see that. We don't see that in Peter Jackson's movie, and I'm wondering if that's because Peter Jackson is a little more conscious of his weight and his size because of his fluctuations that
who
he's been
knows?
going through. I mean, there's a lot of emotional stuff that we're talking about here.
Could be.
And that have to do with movies and politics and writing and why change it? Why did you do this?
Yes.
Between those 2 characters.
Yes.
Whose fingers and influence, You know, how much do you take away from Guillermo del Toro to make it Peter Jackson's vision? You know, how much? There's just a lot going on. So, basically,
bye, guest. Thank you for joining the show. And Jenny, thank you for pointing out very many things that Jenny, you're so good at pointing out necessities. Necessities is part of our conversation. Yeah, it's funny that they did set out on this dangerous adventure with musical instruments, none of which show up in the movie, except for one recorder flute. And it seems that Tolkien has left all the instruments behind in Bag End, it seems, because they're not mentioned again.
Mm-hmm.
And it is funny listening to me say Guillermo del Toro. Everybody tells me that I'm...
Desolation of Smut.
I'm grossly and misappropriating the pronunciation of Guillermo, but I do it anyways because I like to roll my R's. Guillermo del Toro, which means William the Bull in English.
Indeed.
Yes,
well,
indeed.
that was the History of Dwarves Part 5, Bifur, Bofur, Bombur. To recap,
Bofur, Bombur.
You know, Bofur and Bombur are brothers. Bifur is a cousin. Bifur has an axe in his head.
Okay.
Bifur doesn't talk, and he doesn't have any significance to the story whatsoever.
Wait, when he does talk, he speaks in ancient Khuzdul. And evidently, according to the press notes from Warner Brothers, Gandalf is the only person who understands what Bifur is saying. None of the other dwarves present seem to speak ancient Khuzdul, which is all very weird.
There's more character development.
There's a whole Twilight Zone episode about Bifur and that axe that he's got in his forehead, but we're never going to see it.
There's more character development in the press notes than there was in the whole movie. Bifur is a throwaway character.
Indeed.
Ignore the guy with the axe in his head. Bombur, in the book, was one of everybody's favorite characters.
A perennial favorite that everyone loves. Bombur.
He's the biggest guy. He's got the most laughs. He is the Gimli of this story.
Yes, he is. Yes,
he is.
I agree with that analogy. He is the Gimli.
If you look at Lord of the Rings, the book and the movie, Gimli is the comedy of that deep story. Everything Gimli does, but it's not cheesy comedy. It's
only sometimes.
Genuine.
The extended version of Two Towers has some cheesy dwarf belching and dwarf intoxication.
So we have
it's very silly.
In The Hobbit, we have Bombur that his role was lessened. His jokes don't hit, and he doesn't have any lines. And in The Hobbit, we have Bofur, played by James Nesbitt, probably the third most important dwarf in the book, in the movie.
In the movie, you mean?
In the third most dialogue of all the dwarves in the movie. If you go to lordoftheringsproject.com, LOTRproject.com, there's a whole graph of data showing how much dialogue is in the movie.
Oh, that's very useful.
Each character.
Is that from our friend Emil?
Emil
Johansson?
That's very cool. Word count of how much screen time they give.
Yes.
And how much dialogue that they have. And so Bofur, with the hat,
is right after Radagast.
And he's the third most talkative dwarf. He has the closest relationship with Bilbo. So
Thorin has the most dialogue, and then Ken Stott, who plays Balin, and then after that, the most dialogue goes to James Nesbitt as Bofur. And yet in the book, in Tolkien, you're right, he's barely a blink. And there's not much specificity
Bofur with the hat
supporting that character.
Bofur with the hat is going to have more stronger relationship with Bilbo. You're going to see a bigger role than anticipated from Bofur, and to that end, I'm really excited. But I am really excited to see more of Bombur. I want to see those jokes. I want to see those fat jokes.
I want to hear Bombur talk with real dialogue.
I want to see the brothers hit off each other. The skinny Asian Fu Manchu guy and the fat older brother, I want them to bounce off each other. Like, you can't eat like me. I think Bombur has as much to say to Bofur as back. I want to see that.
Oh yeah.
Maybe we'll see that in the extended edition. I don't know, but
and we do not yet have a date for an extended edition, as some of the very clever fans are saying in the chat room. Yes. Okay. Sorry, Blair. That was Return of the King extended edition. Sorry. Yeah. That was not Two Towers with the drinking dwarf jokes. It was ROTK. I stand corrected. But thank you for that edification. What I wanted to mention was we don't know when the date will be for extended version of An Unexpected Journey. And everybody asks, when's the date for the new trailer?
Announce
the new trailer for The Desolation of Smaug. We don't know these dates yet, but we'll immediately announce it on the main page of TheOneRing.net as soon as we find out. We absolutely will mention it online as soon as we know.
At the beginning of the show, we do our little gossip column. Here's the gossip. This is unsubstantiated, unofficial, unreliable.
Only as reliable as your daydreams are.
Unexpected. Here,
Yeah.
Really quick.
Yeah.
The trailer for The Hobbit 2 will be attached to Man of Steel, the Superman movie.
Here's hoping.
We will get the date for the extended editions at Comic-Con as part of the Warner Brothers panel. The One Ring
They better.
will have some special guests at our own panel on Thursday at Comic-Con.
That's great.
And Viggo Mortensen is in New Zealand right now, and they are all shooting for 2.5 months, which is an extremely long time for just pickups. Usually pickups are 2 weeks, but 2.5 months, that's a long time. In fact,
that's enough time to shoot a whole new feature film.
All of the actors are not scheduled to be at San Diego because they're still scheduled to be shooting.
Oh, that's tricky.
So we will see. So those are the rumors, but this has been episode 5.
And thank you for joining us for episode 5
of the history of dwarves. Bifur, Bofur, Bombur, the names that I get mixed up so much, these 3 characters have probably the most changes from the book. Bombur, we both feel that it has negatively impacted the character. Bofur, we think, is elevated the character, but
quite a bit.
We'll find out more when the next movie comes. So
and will any of these characters actually start talking in the second and third films, and talking and doing things that will continue to connect the threads to the existing Lord of the Rings trilogy? The answer is, you betcha.
Till next time.
You betcha they will.
That's Cliff.
Yeah, this here is Cliff, right over here, Clifford Quickbeam Broadway. You can follow me on Twitter at QuickBeam2000, if you would be so kind.
And if you want to hashtag this video, it'll be archived on YouTube in a GIF, and it's the ham party episode, because Bofur loves ham so much that he steals a ham
from Bilbo's
Bilbo.
larder.
So.
Now, a program note, if you want to find us on YouTube, it's not The One Ring, spelled O-N-E.
If you just search for The One Ring, you'll find it.
You want to search for it? You
Yeah.
got to search for THE, numerical 1-N-E. That's what you need to
You'll
find.
never remember
THE, number 1-N-E-R-I-N-G.
Just go to TheOneRing.net. We got links to everything. So, till next time, I'm Justin. That's Cliff.
Bye-bye from Portugal. Thank you for joining us around the world.
This is Ham. And we'll hang out in the chat room. Don't leave the chat room. We'll type.
Hello, Sweden.
Chat with you.
Simba of Sweden. We'll pay more attention to the chat as much as we can. Thanks for being with us on the show. Everybody from around the world, from the UK, Europe, South America, Asia, the States, worldwide. We love having you guys join us on TheOneRing.net, and we'll see you very soon for more mischief.
Bye-bye.
Next week, Thorin Oakenshield.